Better or worse, I decided to give Forever Winter another shot. And I figured that instead of continuing on the usual rant about how early access is no excuse for poor performance, bugs, and primary features of the game did not function, let's talk about instead what the game is like, assuming that it is exactly as the developers intended. So I'm going to talk about the Forever Winter as if it runs like a decent game and doesn't have any of the issues I've talked about in the past. This is important to do because, one, people are always trying to give a game that they think is good some sort of excuse or another. But let's just try and isolate it and talk about the game on its own merits. No bugs, no performance issues, and most importantly, no epic. How is the Forever Winter? So the game's premise is essentially you're a poor, broke, dusty nobody, a homeless scavenger who's picking at this ongoing eternal war between different factions. You're gathering up the scraps that they leave behind and scuttling away. You're not a hero, you're not a fighter. Yeah. So I don't have a problem with that. In fact, that was the main appeal that drew me in when I first saw like the teasers and the promotional videos and stuff. But the execution of it does leave a lot to be desired, I'm not going to lie. A lot of games want to throw around the word hardcore, hardcore extraction shooter, hardcore shooter, sim, stuff like that. And to be honest, this game doesn't really hit those marks if you think about it, even in the context of its own mechanics, its own world. So the issue is I'm supposed to believe that these are two highly advanced armies going at it on this battlefield, but the way that the AI work and function, and the way that they interact with each other on the map actually reminds me a lot of something like Totally Accurate Battleground Simulator, where you're essentially just picking units that are on opposite sides of a map, pressing the play button, and then watching them smash into each other. Except in this instance, they both have guns, sometimes mechs, sometimes tanks, sometimes helicopters and whatnot. Any military operation, any competent military operation is going to have some sort of objective. Whether it be taking a point and holding it, setting up an ambush for the enemy, taking out high-value targets, or acquiring something and escaping the area with it. Target acquisition. In the Forever Winter, pretty much it's just a bunch of different factions coming together, and if they spot each other, they open fire and start, going at it. It's random, it's chaotic, but it doesn't actually remind me of any type of realistic war. And I get that that's to make it sort of dynamic, but unfortunately this actually takes away from the dynamic part. So far from what I've been able to observe is these two armies will always fight at the exact same spots. If you go to certain points on the map, you will always see action, no matter what. And that makes the AI predictable. It doesn't make it hard, it makes it annoying. Yes, you have to navigate around it or through it, but it's always going to be there. So if you can get away with not going there, then you win. Speaking of predictable, there are also spots on the map that will always have certain pieces of loot. For example, water is a very, very important resource when it comes to this game, and you basically get like a reset, similar to like Lethal Company, if you run out of water. A lot of people didn't like this because the water runs out in real time, even if you don't have the game open. But there's a locked bunker on one of the maps that always has one barrel of water inside of it. There's other stuff, sometimes more of it, sometimes less, but the constant is the water barrel is always in there. I've been unable to find water in other spots, although I'm sure it's somewhere. But it doesn't inspire, or it doesn't make me want to explore the map because I know that I can just always get that thing there. And I imagine that it's the same for other pieces of loot as well. If I need a certain type of ammunition, it wouldn't be very hard for me to find out if there's a spot on some map where it's always there. So, the loot, combined with the fact that AI will always be fighting at one spot or another, means that if you don't have to explore, then don't explore. It's going to get you killed because action is always going to be at those points of interest. Then there's how the AI interacts with the player itself. This is honestly maybe the most disappointing part about the Forever Winter, because there have been countless games going all the way back to like probably the PlayStation 2 era, but because I can't name one, I'll say the PlayStation 3 at least, that have done this exact same concept with more variable, more dynamic interactions that feel natural for their setting. At one point in time, I was coming out of that locked bunker that I mentioned earlier, and a soldier passed in front of me. He looked at me, but didn't shoot. I got jumped, so I shot him with my shotgun and killed him. A second soldier walked by, turns at me, pauses for a very long time, and then fires his .50 caliber and turns me into jelly. But I remember thinking to myself, that's not how military operatives would work at all. In fact, all of the encounters are this weird staring contest where you're wondering if the AI is going to perceive you as hostile or not, which is like a dice roll. I saw another video of somebody who was trying to describe the way that the developers wanted the game to feel. And they used a particular scene from a movie where a guy is in a battlefield caught in between two military forces that are fighting each other, and he's scampering between them, luring one side into the field of view of the other so they fight each other and don't shoot him. And I just remember thinking that militaries might have an excess of ammunition and weapons and soldiers, but that doesn't mean that they grow on trees and that they're willing to just waste it. If they see an unarmed person, they might try and detain you, but unless you give them a reason to actually shoot you, they'd just be wasting their ammo, especially in a live firefight where they have other people who are most definitely armed and who will most definitely shoot you. Now, if you don't live in America, this next part that I'm going to go on might not make a whole lot of sense to you, but try and follow me. Let's play pretend. So you're walking down the street, and you see somebody with a gun. In America, or at least the part of America that I live in, that's not too uncommon. And it doesn't inherently mean that that person is up to no good, or that they mean you harm. So you're walking along, and you see somebody who just so happens to have a gun. They just have it. Okay, well, I live in an area where open carry is allowed. It's legal. Now let's change that a little bit. You're walking down the street, that same street on a different day, and then you see somebody aiming their gun at you. You get it? There's a difference between just having a gun and aiming the gun at someone. One action is very neutral, if not intimidating. The other action very clearly means hostile intent. That's something that the Forever Winter should probably make use of, is if I take my gun and aim it at a soldier, they should absolutely fucking shoot me. But if I have a gun and they see me, okay, they're on a battlefield. Everyone's got guns. You're an idiot if you don't have a gun. That would be a much better way to have the AI discern between player hostile intent and not. Now, they might have some sort of lore reason why that's not the case, but I'm just saying that it makes a whole lot more sense for somebody who's got the business end of a gun in their face, to be way more likely to go trigger happy than you see some huddled up, crouched over hobo with some metal wire on their back and some junk in their hands. I don't see why that means open fire. Also, I'm a big fan of Assassin's Creed, right? Especially the older ones, of course, I mean those. And they had a system in it where the guards would give you voice lines for if you were trespassing. So they'd say, hey, you're not supposed to be here. Shoo, off with you. And then they'd say, if you didn't leave, they'd be like, all right, I'm warning you. Get away from here or we're gonna mess you up. And then if you pulled out your weapon, then they would immediately go hostile and they would attack you. Or if you moved up on them and they gave you a warning like a third time, then they'd go hostile and you'd engage in combat. That sort of thing would benefit the Forever Winter a lot. It makes way more sense for a soldier who's on edge to be like, okay, civilian, you're not a part of either army, you shouldn't be here, get away. And then they tell you again, go away or we will open fire. And then if you stay, then they shoot you, or if you aim your gun at them, then they shoot you. That would be a much better way to handle player to AI engagement. Because as it stands now, you're just sitting there looking at the eyes of an enemy or a potential enemy, wondering if today is the day that they're going to be hostile or if they're going to let you go past. It's incredibly annoying and kind of ruins the immersion because I'm sitting there going, if I have the drop on a soldier, I should probably just shoot them and either run or stand my ground and fight. But because the game has a reputation system with these different factions, that doesn't really seem like a good solution. It's not a good approach to the game. And as a result, I'm kind of sitting here thinking, man, the Forever Winter is a bundle of good ideas, but very few of them shine through in this early access. So if there's some things that they're going to work on, that's definitely a few of them. The other huge issue that I have with this game is the way that the player controls. Now, I'm not talking about bugs, I'm just saying general control. Again, I live in the United States. So if you ask me how much military training do you need to operate a gun competently, in a state where, unfortunately, minors and people who shouldn't have guns use them on a regular basis, the answer is not much. So the fact that the player controls like some weird... The fact that the player controls like somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, completely unrealistic, and it makes the game difficult because the game controls like butts, not because it's a harsh environment or a situation. The game is so clunky and stiff when it comes to moving around and aiming your gun that it's like, alright, I get it, these guys aren't soldiers. But again, if a child can get their hands on a firearm and go to town, there's no excuse for these people to be unable to quickly go from not ready to ready. It's frustrating. And any difficulty that's in this game has nothing to do with its setting or like real difficulty. It's because you're fighting the controls, not the AI. Again, it's very easy to get the drop on AI in this game, but when you're fiddling around with something that doesn't feel good to control, then, well, you're going to lose. So, I wouldn't call this game hard, I'd call it frustrating. But that's just my opinion. If you've played the Forever Winter, let me know what you think about it down in the comments below. I don't know. A part of me wants them to be successful, but another part of me is like, I feel still that a lot of the promises that they talked about were just hollow and empty. And it's like, by the time they get around to doing all of the things they say that they're going to do, is this game still going to be better than something like Escape from Tarkov or Marauders or some other game that has guns in it? I have some extreme doubts, but we'll see. Let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear them as always. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you